All right, what is up? I'm literally so lit up because we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics. And I have this beautiful guest all the way in Ohio. Her name is Valerie Rubin, and she is an anxious attachment specialist and trauma informed somatic coach. Valerie, what is up? I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here, Kelsey. I'm just so excited to dive in. I can already tell this is going to be a juicy episode.
Right? I know, that's like the word. At first, I was so reluctant to use that word, and then I could just feel myself like wanting to say it so badly, and I'm like, fuck it, we're gonna start using that. It is gonna be juicy. Okay, Valerie,
Yes.
yeah, tell me, like, what got you into this? Because most of us who get into this stuff, it's because we have to heal all of our own things. So what brought you here?
Yeah, you got a girlfriend. Ultimately, for me, it started with I had deeply terrible crippling chronic anxiety. And so I really had that up until I was 21. And what ended up happening was I started to develop like chronic health issues. I started to develop fibromyalgia, chronic pain, adrenal fatigue. All of these issues were stemming left and right from the chronic anxiety. And then I really decided to dive deeper into what's really the root cause. I tried talk therapy, medication, all the right things, quote unquote, right
Hmm.
things
Yeah.
that mainstream society and the mental health system tells us to do. I wasn't getting better. So I tried hypnotherapy, but I tried a specific type of therapy called rapid transformational therapy.
Hmm. Cool.
Ultimately, it's just fancy words for it's just a different type of hypnotherapy. And that really helped me to reduce my anxiety a ton. And then within 6 months, the anxiety became much more manageable and the chronic pain went away. The fibromyalgia went away. I also had cystic acne. I don't know if you were able to look at my Instagram, but one of my pinned posts, it talked about and showed my skin before it and after doing these different tools and modalities that I teach and use with my clients. But ultimately, I decided to ditch my plan of getting a PhD and I decided to become a hypnotherapist instead.
Nice.
And so I ended up, and I, of course, ended up specializing in anxiety, but I noticed very common threads of people who weren't getting better. It was people with a so-called anxious attachment style and
Hmm.
people who were in toxic relationships. And so then I decided to dive even deeper into anxious attachment work but ultimately, it's just parts of ourselves
Yes.
that don't feel whole, worthy, and complete, just as we are. And this fear of abandonment as well, that ultimately drives the anxiety and drives a lot of these coping mechanisms and protector parts of perfectionism, chronic anxiety, panic attacks, people pleasing. It's all just cultivated and formed from our relationships from our caregivers. And so that's really how I got into the work I did and how I've become securely attached using these brain and body, modalities. And we'll talk more into that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's so incredible. And also, I'm just like, for anyone who's just listening, your skin is so clear. Like, I would never have imagined that you had like, this like outward manifestation of all of this at all. You can't see, like, which is so wild, right? Like, I love I love that you were not like I don't love this for
Yeah.
you, but I love that you were experiencing so many actual physical symptoms because
Hmm.
I'm a huge firm believer, like everything going on in our physical body is literally just a manifestation of something going on energetically, spiritually, emotionally, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and it's so interesting too because I feel like everything you've been through, you got to have this like beautiful before and after, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. It's really like it was a huge catalyst for me. Like I definitely wouldn't be here and be so passionate about what I do if I didn't go through what I went through. And I completely agree with the physical symptoms. Like I'm so glad that I had those so that it could show me my like tender parts of myself that I wasn't accepting, that I wasn't loving, and it showed me like deeper ways of where I needed support. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the physical pain and the
Yeah.
acne because it is so outward. It's like screaming for attention. It's just
Yeah.
a a symptom of what's going on internally, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So like for yourself with the anxiety,
Mhm.
it initially was anxiety and then you realize anxious attachment, toxic relationships, things like that. Looking back, the anxiety, did it have to do with the things that were going on within your anxious attachment, or was it just like anxiety as a whole?
I think almost like both. So,
Mm,
like I was raised with very emotionally unavailable parents. One of my parents is a narcissist, the other one's a codependent. Of course, like played out those fun little codependent dynamics
yeah.
myself because like our brain and our nervous system is wired for the familiar. It hates change.
Yeah.
But ultimately what helped me to become much more trauma informed and working with the body was I went through a toxic relationship of myself. And so what ended up happening was, I was working with just chronic anxiety and doing hypnotherapy, but I felt that I wasn't getting enough lasting results for clients because they were stuck in these different dynamics. So from my own toxic relationship, I was in a trauma bond. And I learned about the vagus nerve that, the vagus nerve is this nerve in your body that if you are experiencing chronic stress or trauma, your vagus nerve literally doesn't function properly. And your vagus nerve is the nerve in your body that controls whether or not your fight or flight is turned on. So I
Mm,
started to learn all about nervous system regulation, the vagus nerve, and then I also learned more about somatic therapy because we can tell ourselves that we're lovable, we're worthy, we're enough. But if our body isn't believing it, if we're not embodying that, we're going to repeat the same patterns. And those same patterns are always showing us typically in our romantic relationships. They're the most unconscious thing in the world that happens.
yeah. Yeah, totally. I feel like there's so many things that I want to touch on. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so funny because it's like you're like, it's like the perfect example of like really like going in the niches and just like how much we can like go into. Um, yeah, I think that like when I think of anxiety, it's funny because when I think of people with anxious attachment, I don't necessarily think of them with anxiety per se. They just have like a
Mm.
symptom of anxiety when there's things showing up. So I feel like they don't even know unless, again, they come in front of a person, right? Because you're not experiencing anxious attachment. I mean, I have had like friends experience anxious attachment in friendships, but generally it's like with the romantic partner. So it's like people listening to this, like there are likely people listening that have just like generalized anxiety, which
Yes.
in my mind it's the same thing. Like I
It
feel like
really
it's like
is
the
the
same
same
thing.
thing. It is the same thing. These are really, I like to look at it as these are just labels to label our internal experience. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the time, people will ask me when I'm on podcasts, oh, can you heal from anxious attachment? Are you stuck this way? Absolutely not. It's something that these are just different wounds that are showing you what areas of your life you need to work on. And I'm glad you brought that up with anxious attachment because a lot of the time, people who have an anxious attachment, their nervous system is stuck in a fight or flight state. But some
Mm,
people, they have this reaction where they're fine and they're totally secure and confident when they're single. But then when they're in a romantic relationship, all their shit fires up and all that anxious attachment triggers, waiting for their partner to text them, waiting for to feel good enough, waiting for that external validation, because all of these things are amplified when we're in relationship with other people. Our trauma doesn't happen from us being alone by ourselves. It to an extent,
yeah.
our relationship, our traumas are caused by people who have relationship to us, people we have relationships with. Childhood trauma, it's from a lot like our parents or bullying or sexual trauma. It's the same in relationships as well. But adding on to another point, some people could be secure in their friendships. Some people could be, anxious in their romantic relationships and then avoidant in their finances, for example. So we
Mm.
can have different attachments, if we want to use that label for different avenues of our life.
Interesting. That's super interesting because in my world, I find like I often find like the man and the money show up in the same way, right? Like that's
Mm,
like I always see that. And then
mm,
but again, you like so my work is in fragmentation like you as well, parts, but I work in regards to like finding union with yourself and then with the man. Like, I do relationship stuff and business stuff. It's all in relation with you and then masculine and feminine, right? But
Mhm.
and again, I believe like I same as you. Like I'm like anxious attachment is not a death sentence. It's not forever. There's nuances, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So when you were like recognizing this within yourself, and again, I'm like really thinking about the vagus nerve as well. Okay, in my past, I used to be a respiratory therapist, okay? And we like,
Cool.
yeah. And it's known that like you can massage your vagus nerve and basically make yourself like faint, okay, right? Like so clients like or like patients, we would like sometimes like massage their vagus nerve, right? So the work that you're doing is so powerful because again, it really is tied into the body. And I think that people don't understand that like it is that scientific, right?
Abs- Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll just give an example since we're on the vagus nerve topic. So, when I was going through my toxic relationship, a lot of people they'll find that they want to reach back out to their ex. They're missing their ex so much. They're constantly thinking about them. They're having something called like withdrawals, just like people withdraw from addictions or alcohol. It when we're in a when you're in a toxic relationship, and you leave that, your brain goes through the same thing as addiction
Mm,
recovery. So the vagus nerve exercises and nervous system regulation is going to help curve those cravings because your body is literally just trying to bring you back into homeostasis, back into
wow.
feeling regulated. And so when you're able to soothe that response by using vagus toning breath work, different nervous system regulation practices, you're able to really come back to yourself and feel safe within yourself. And I did different vagus nerve exercises 3 times a day, like clockwork, even though a part of me felt resistant to it. But I never went back to this guy. I kept no contact the entire time because it's like, I don't want to repeat that. And I haven't. So, yeah, that's
Wow.
just like a way to show how powerful this is. It's not even about your ex or your ex partner. Like people say, "Oh, I miss them. I want to reach out to them." Do you miss them? Or are you in a freeze response? Are you feeling really depressed within yourself and you're looking for that dopamine hit?
Yeah, your face. Anyone who's listening, she's doing a whole thing. Um, oh, okay. Yes, 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 yes. So I'm like, for people that are listening right now, how can they know if they're trauma bonded to somebody?
Yes. So, how they may know that they are trauma bonded to someone, so they feel helpless to leave. A part of them really wants to stay, but a part of them really wants to leave. Trauma bonds, also, it's very high, very low. Extreme highs, extreme lows. A lot of like on and off types of relationships. Um, those are some really, really high markers of trauma bonding, like high highs, high highs, low lows. Also, if you're, I don't want to say always, but typically with trauma bonds, they're typically with narcissistic types. And so
Mm,
what happens is we have this narcissistic abuse cycle. So a sign that you may be in a trauma bond is like starting with love bombing. They love bomb you. They say you're the most beautiful girl in the world, you're the most special girl in the world. Maybe they haven't even been on a first date with you yet. They're wanting you to delete your apps before you're even, you know, talking for very long. This may look like they're telling you I love you within 1 week of a relationship. They're moving things very, very quickly. It's not slow at all. It's just very hot and cold. So the first one is the love bombing stage. The second stage is devaluation. This is where that criticism comes in. They're just not being kind to you. They're criticizing everything that you do. Like an ex of mine, and this was all just a reflection of how I treated myself and my own
yeah.
mother father wounds, of course. But it would get so bad to a point where he would criticize how I cut an onion. Like it's just so extra. And then so the third stage is discard, where they discard you, and the fourth stage is they'll hoover. This could look like them texting you at 2 in the morning. Hey, are you up? Hey, I'd love to talk. I miss you. uh, saying that they're going to change, they're going to be different this time, and then the same cycle happens again. So those are some key signs that you are being trauma bonded and you just feel helpless to leave, but you know logically it's the right decision, but
So
you
can we
don't follow
say,
that.
yeah, so can we say that like trauma bond is like there's it's like an addictive pattern, basically.
It is, absolutely, because the hot and cold, love bombing and devaluation, it creates intermittent enforcement, just like when a gambler is using a slot machine. Sometimes it's going to be fabulous, they're going to win money, but a lot of the times they won't, and you can't predict what's going to happen.
Mm. Yeah. So then you keep going back over and over. Okay. So I'm like, for anyone, this is amazing. So then anxious attachment.
Mhm.
In my world, tell me what you think. In my world, it's like there's parts of you that are afraid of rejection or abandonment or being alone. I think that that's like a really big one. Like I feel women have to be like, you have to be okay completely alone to be able to have a relationship, right? Um, and then to me, those parts get addicted to the external reassurance, basically.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the core of anxious attachment. That's also why their brain will talk them out of leaving and because of
Mm,
that fear of being alone. And it's not even just about the fear of being alone with this partner and breaking up with this partner. It's also reminding their body of when they were 3 years old, 4 years old, five
mm,
years old, when their mom and dad physically or emotionally left. And that's too big for a 4 or 5 year old or 3 year old to sit with. So it becomes suppressed. And then this person who's toxic or you're trauma
yeah,
bonded to, then when they leave, it triggers up the same suppressed emotions from when you were 3 or 4 or 5. So no wonder why it feels so impossible to leave. And it feels so big, way bigger than you can handle.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So then it's like and obviously like we know like there's like really deep work and you can't just do this, but it's like you have to ultimately heal the root cause of wanting to be in this quote unquote comfort zone of yours, ultimately.
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what it is it's a comfort zone. It's familiar. It feels too
Hmm.
scary to leave because of what they represent for you. It's,
Yeah,
oh, if they leave me, then I'm never good enough. Then I'm never going to find love again. They're the best I'll ever get. And that also goes back to, right? That low self-esteem from
yeah.
childhood because self-esteem is learned.
Mm, interesting. That's really interesting. I need water. Self-esteem is learned. You know what? I remember I was watching this comedy once and he was like, bitch, it's called self-esteem. It's like esteem of the self. But it's like, yeah, it does come from the self, but as kids, it doesn't come from the self. It comes from our parents.
Correct. Literally our subconscious mind between 0 to 7 years old, that's prime time, baby. That's where all your beliefs really get stored. And
Yeah.
that's when you're first starting to learn about the world, about yourself, about the people around you, what relationships are like. And so your subconscious mind learns by repetition. So like even a client of mine messaged me earlier today saying, oh, my partner scolded me for how I was feeling. She was feeling really anxious. And it's like, think about that. That really impacts your self-esteem. Think about what that does to a child as well.
Yeah.
You're learning that and then it becomes familiar and then you attract and choose someone similar to your most wounded parent because our brain
Mm.
wants to end that loop.
Interesting. Yeah. Which I'm just thinking about like how like right now I feel like all the men, not all, but like a large portion of men and actually women, all my clients, mother wounds. Massive, massive. It's like like everyone talks when I was a kid, it was like father wounds, daddy issues, it was all the rage. And I truly feel like psychology and science is showing us that it's actually less about father wounds and way more about the mother, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a story for that. But yeah,
Yeah.
continue.
I'm just like, I literally feel like every man I've ever worked with and every man I know is like repeating mother wounds with women. And then every single woman I work with, they all are creating romantic relationships that mirror their like narcissistic mothers or chaotic mothers. Like ultimately, there's no space for her in her relationship, in her business, anywhere in her life because of the mother. It's
hmm
crazy.
hmm Absolutely. Because say like this is just my experience, like I'll
Yeah.
from personal experience, and I tend to attract very similar clients with like similar dynamics.
Yeah.
So what I find is that as you go deeper into the work, yes, you might have had a chaotic, alcoholic, narcissistic father, but your mother is the one who stayed in that relationship. So
Mm,
really, it's about all the hurt from your mother not protecting you because we're mammals. Our nervous systems work the same way as mammals do. So if you see someone hurting your child, whether that's emotional or physical, the bear will come in and hurt whatever that predator is. And so humans will justify the treatment that's happening to their children because they have their own unresolved trauma. But yes, getting to your point,
interesting.
yes, it's because I used to think that my previous toxic relationship was because of like father wounds, but
Yeah.
literally he was a exact replica combination of almost both my parents' wounds. So perfect healing formula to heal my stuff, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, one time, it sounds like you do parts work. I also
Yeah.
do parts work in IFS. And so ultimately, I was doing this parts work session on myself from my coach. And what ended up happening was the presenting problem, the symptom was I was craving to go back to my ex. This is when like we were broken up for not very long, years
Mhm.
ago. And so I had this huge craving for him. And I just was like, I'm over him. I don't know why this keeps coming up. And so I go back into the somatic IFS and I'm all of these memories are coming up of when my mom didn't protect me from my
Mm,
father's mental abuse, all of that. And so it was all about that. And my mom was very unavailable. My dad also has multiple sclerosis, so she would go and help him over helping and protecting her children, aka myself. And so I would have this huge craving for my mom because who wouldn't if your parent is unavailable? So I literally attracted someone who was it was the same feeling. This craving was the same feeling from my mom. And I just remember the biggest emotional release crying for like 15 minutes. It was one of the most cathartic sessions I've had. And I instantly never talked to him again, never
wow.
had cravings again. I didn't talk to him after we broke up in general after that, but the cravings were still there. It was gone completely.
Wow. Yeah, I honestly don't doubt it. It's super interesting because I do feel like we do attract clients that mirror our own stuff because it's what we've healed, right? Like,
Mhm.
because yeah, that sounds really interesting to me. Like, mom didn't protect you, and then you literally attracted a man who also didn't protect you. And this is like,
Mhm.
it's so funny. I was having a conversation with a client today, how it's like when we outsource, you want the man to bring you commitment and stability, and then he brings you instability. Or you want him to bring you finances and he brings you the opposite. Like, it's like they can't give you what you haven't yet given yourself, ultimately. So we're chatting about anxious attachment in trauma bonds and toxic relationships. But the thing that's coming through too is like okay, somebody, I'm like a philosopher, okay. Somebody with anxious attachment, ultimately, I feel like they often go find avoidant attachment partners. But if they
Right.
were to be, and like for anyone listening, I love you, don't take offense to this, but if you have anxious attachment and you go with a secure person, you are quote unquote the quote unquote toxic one, right? Quote unquote lovingly, I love you, don't, right? Because it is like they're the ones. I was reading this thing the other day on TikTok. I love TikTok just for like the research part of like what you see. This girl came in and she's like mental health issues and like so much love, and her boyfriend was going to go out and clearly had anxious attachment. Her boyfriend was going out. And she's like, I just need you with me. And he's like, you always do this when I'm about to go out and have a good night. Like, this is not okay. And then he's like, why can't you call a friend? And she's like, I need you specifically. And all these things. And she posted it in order for everyone to villainize him as though there was something wrong with him
Oh,
for going out. Let me tell you, Valerie, there was like millions of comments. Million. It was crazy. I was just like, like I was just like collecting data and intel for content, right? And I was like, everyone was like, yo, that's not fair. This poor guy, like she has anxious attachment, she has these unhealed wounds, and now she's guilt tripping him when this is his one guy's night. And again, this guy didn't seem like he was doing anything bad. Like people should have their own
Right.
time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's like, I don't know, like I want to kind of chat about that. Like it
Yes.
has to be healed, right? Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
absolutely. And typically, like with these type of dynamics, and that's a really common trigger for someone who's anxiously attached. It's all coming back to that fear of being alone because like in IFS or parts work, if we're saying it that, these protector parts, this anxious attachment is coming in to protect this inner child version of you who doesn't feel
Mm,
good enough, who doesn't feel important, who feels shame. And so if this girl was to be left alone, she would have to confront her own shame, loneliness, sadness, whatever she hasn't confronted within herself. And her partner helps her soothe her. That's my assumption, but that
yeah.
ultimately is codependent. That's codependency. And codependency really, it just means I don't feel safe in my body, so I need you to regulate for me.
Mm, that's really good. I'm like, can you say that again? Can you say what
Yes.
codependency
Yes, absolutely. Because and I used to deeply struggle with that. And this
Yeah,
is what a lot of clients tell me. If my partner has a bad day, I have a bad day. And
yeah.
when I originally started, when I was like really brand new to coaching with anxiety, like the first few months of it before, like, because I was also still in the midst of healing my own stuff. What ended up happening is I would give like one session, I'd be completely effing drained the rest of the day. It's because when you're in that lower energy state, when you're in that lower vibration, when you have these anxious attachment wounds, when you have these wounds that are begging to be healed, other people's stuff will impact you so much deeper. And secure attachment doesn't mean, because that's what everyone wants, quote unquote, is a secure
Yeah.
attachment. Secure attachment doesn't mean, oh, you're never going to leave me and then I'll feel safe. It means even if you do leave, I will be safe. I'll learn to
Hmm.
be okay on my own. I am safe, regardless of what happens with my business, with my partner, with my friend.
Yeah. Ultimately, it just feels like, again, like I'm I developed my own technique. I call it ERT, and it's like a inspired by parts work, but I created my whole thing and I teach it when I teach coaches my mirror method, okay? And I would shout it to the rooftops that I truly, okay, a year ago, 5 years ago, I would have shouted only needing to heal fragments. Now,
Mm,
because I've done so much body work, like myofascial release and somatic work, and now I'm also being trained in somatic, like somatically. Now I know that you actually need parts work and somatics. You need both.
correct. You can't just have one.
No, yeah, like the fragmentations, it's like an energetic level, and that's cool. But then there's also the nervous system, like the actual physical level. And then I somehow also bring in the masculine, feminine energetics, which is like a key little thing for me too. But like, okay, what it really comes down to is ultimately you're whole.
Hmm.
It's like whatever happens outside of you, he leaves, he doesn't leave, you get paid, you don't get paid, you lose your job, you don't lose your job. It's you're not victimizing yourself by it anymore, basically.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. And the thing with people who are anxiously attached, they find their worth externally through their business, through their partner. If their partner isn't reassuring them, if they're not making 20K months, they feel like shit because it's just
Mm,
a reflection of their external reality. But yeah, absolutely. You can't just work with, as you mentioned, the fragmented parts of you or these anxious attachment parts. You have to do that work, but you also have to work with the body. I do something called brain spotting.
okay.
So have you heard of that before?
No, it just sounds super
Okay.
cool though. I'm like, tell us about it.
Fabulous. So ultimately, so if you notice, even if you're talking to me or talking to one of your clients, you might notice someone might look up here, look down, look to the side. That's showing that they're processing something deeper. So just
Mm,
like when you're anxious, you can't talk your way out of it. So brain spotting helps to locate in your visual field where the trauma is stuck in your body so that
mm,
it helps to locate where the trauma memories are stored so that you can release them. And then triggers won't be coming up constantly, or you won't be controlled by them. Like you said, just like you said, if you get paid, don't get paid. If your partner texts you back, if they don't text you back, you're okay because you
Yeah.
regulate the body.
Interesting. Yeah, what's like really hitting me so deeply as you're talking about, and that's super cool because I think that like you said it's called brain spotting. Okay.
Correct. You got it.
I think I think that for people like likely like yourself, like myself, we've been doing so much healing. There's so much awareness that if I were to just like I know where it is, I'll go do myofascial release. My body tells me where it is in my fascia, or I can connect to my nervous system. I can connect to how old the part is. I can clear these things. But for clients who maybe don't have that type of awareness, I can see how that would be super beneficial, right? To show you. And I feel like I did learn something in that regard in NLP, like where we would like
Mm-hmm.
map I just never use it. I'm like, I did all these certifications. I'm like Master Prac NLP, Master Hypnosis, and like all these things. And I'm just like, I'm going to develop my own thing and go do that. But
Yeah.
it was super valuable. Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing in all of this though is like, obviously you're going to be anxiously attached if you literally need this thing to feel good.
Correct. Absolutely. That's what it all stems down to, really, truly.
Yeah.
It's like if you feel safe on your own, just like you said, if you feel safe in your body, if you heal these fragmented parts of you, every baby is born secure and worthy. We have this conditioning, the trauma, the beliefs that are inhibited in us from a child. And then once you release all of that, you naturally become securely attached. You naturally start to feel worthy. You naturally start to feel safe in your body. And it's becomes easier. Life can become easier. I'm not saying life is easy, don't get me wrong, but things from the outside world won't take you off your rocker as much.
Yeah, like you get to stay centered, right? You're like,
Yes.
and that's yeah, right. It's like it's so funny because like insecure is just like you're just not secure within yourself, right?
Mhm.
I do really want to chat about codependency because again, so we're just getting to know each other, okay? But I'm like psych major, minor in philosophy. I'm a Sagittarius. I love philosophizing, and I feel like you're going to help me connect dots with the codependency. And I feel like anyone listening to this is also going to connect dots. Okay, codependency. Typical codependency in the psychological realm is in regards to addiction. And
Correct.
right, it's like it's not the way that like people and anyway, I know that all my listeners learn most of their stuff from TikTok and Instagram, right? We all learn from all these things. And it's like the way that we're talking about codependency is not actually the same as addictive codependency where you have like an addict and you're in a relationship and then there's a code. It's not the same thing. So for me, like, and I know my thing has always been codependency, and it stems from my mom. Like, my mom was 17 when she had me. We were like
Mhm.
best friends. We were like best friends, loved each other so much, but also, I don't know, like, I don't want to say, personally, I believe narcissism is like a spectrum. I think that we all have traits of narcissism, and then it goes like all the way to like a personality. But to me, BPD, narcissism, psychopath, like psychopaths, all those things are really just extreme fragmentation. Like you're just
Correct.
so fragmented that there's like the soul has left the body, basically. You know what I mean? And you can see it in like a psychopath's eyes or like in an NPD eyes. Like there's no human left. So for me, it's a spectrum. And if I look at my childhood, like my mom was like, it was like hints of narcissism in the sense that
Mm.
I had to be what she wanted me to be.
Mhm.
And I can
Mhm.
she passed away now, so all of my healing has been it's okay. Both my parents are passed, which is such an interesting dynamic because like there's a lot of healing that can happen. And I'm sure
Mhm.
you've seen this with yourself and clients. The parents generally don't heal, don't take accountability, don't change. So there is like an ease of healing when they've passed because like you can connect to like the truer aspect of themselves versus like their human ego that's like defensive and deflecting and all the
Mhm.
things, right? So there is like aspects there, but I can like lovingly reflect that what was going down was she just had a lack of safety within herself. She was not free herself, so she had to kind of like make me be. But all that to say that my thing has been codependency and like
Mhm.
a deep like need to, and I'm also Libra Venus, like a deep need
Mm,
to let's figure it out together. You know what I mean? Like,
mm,
oh, let's be fair. Like you want to have sushi, Valerie. I want to have steak. Okay, let's go have sushi this time. Like it's not even people pleasing. It's literally like a fairness. Like I'm very fair.
mm,
And so it's always stemmed as this codependency. And it's so interesting because it doesn't like click in my mind. Like I understand anxious attachment. There's a dependency on the external world. And then
mhm,
codependency, it really does. And that's why I was like, let's go deeper into this. Because even you just saying that on client calls, it used to affect you a lot. And then even
mhm,
people saying if they have a bad day, I have a bad day. To me,
mhm,
that's just you're absorbing you have no sense of self. Ultimately, is what it feels like. But I feel like there's like layers here. And anyone who's listening, it's like, I know that people listening are like, do I have anxious attachment? Am I codependent? They probably think they're codependent. But
mhm.
again, it's like, I feel like it's not, to me, it's not clear, even though I do this work. Like, I feel like there's something here.
I totally hear you there. And yeah, just go back to your mom and then we'll go back to the codependent parts and dive deeper into that. It sounds like your mom really raised you with this conditional love, and that is so common. Maybe a little bit of like parentification, like you two were best friends, like just no separation from her
Mhm.
and you in a, I don't want to say unhealthy because I don't know the dynamic, but just in a meshed way.
Yeah, 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 which is really interesting. And I think that that's how most of our parents were back then. Like, they didn't know. Like, I'm a
Hmm.
mom, and so my son is
Oh.
6. Yeah, he's like so
Oh.
cool. And I'm constantly like, he'll be like, do you think this is cool? And I'm like, do you think it's cool? Like,
Yes.
we're
Oh, I
like,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah,
I
because
love that.
yeah, and I'll catch myself if I find myself like, he can be really loud, like, like like literally like almost like embarrassingly loud sometimes and I'm just like and I'll want to like stop him and like control and then I'll ease up because I remember like no that's what literally happened to me like there was just too much of that and it's like so I'm so like conscientious of like making sure that I let him be his own little person which again is
Mhm.
not easy because like he's 6 and he's into like horror
Oh,
super
okay.
scary stuff and I'm just like oh my god mommy's so scared like and I'm just like it's
Oh.
so challenged but he loves it like he's always loved like creepy clowns and like creepy stuff and I'm just like okay like and it's so hard not to like I can relate to all of our parents who were just trying to teach us but were
Hmm.
making us wrong and loving us conditionally right.
Yes, and it's because they learned that way. And like
Mhm.
going back to the codependent part, like for example, like adding on an example, like parents, they just because they also mental health wasn't as big of a deal or mainstream as it is now. And
Yeah.
also like psychology, the field itself has only really started to develop since like the 1940s and 50s. Like really think about
Mhm.
that for a moment. But my mom, how it would show up for her, like these codependent patterns is very like a mesh. Like what I was feeling, she was feeling. Like if I was upset, she would start to cry. And then I would feel bad for even sharing my emotions because I felt a part of me felt like a burden. And I had to really unlearn that. But yeah, just codependency, there's so many layers to it, but
Yeah.
it's like a lot of people that I know who've been raised by addicts, that's their form of addiction is codependency. It's like if you're safe, I'm safe. If you're not okay, I'm not okay. And this could also look like constantly gossiping about other people, constantly worrying about other people. And because you feel safe, it's also a distraction. Worrying about
Yeah.
other people, that's a distraction. And for coaches or business owners, this could look like also just feeling completely responsible for other people's emotions. You don't even have to be a coach to do that, but feeling
Yeah.
responsible for other people's emotions, feeling completely responsible for the results that you get them. Obviously, like you need to take some accountability. If none of your clients are getting results, okay. But
Yeah.
like, but it's like feeling completely responsible. It's like some things are just out of your control. and
Yeah.
you can't control some of these outcomes. But yeah, that's also how some codependency patterns can also show up. At least that's how it showed up for me.
It's so weird because like Valerie, we're talking and like I'm like it's so hard to I feel like it's so easy to conceptualize anxious attachment, avoid I love talking about avoidant attachment as well, all these things. But codependency, it doesn't feel easy to conceptualize. It doesn't. Like I think because there's so many nuances and what it feels like a loss of identity. It feels like
Hmm.
not wanting to focus on yourself, only feeling safe by focusing on others. It also feels like um no space for you. Like, you talking about with your mom, it's like you share your emotions. So there's meant to be space for your emotions. And then if she starts crying, there's no space for Valerie. Now it's about her, right? So it feels like a
Hmm.
smallness, but then the distraction piece hits so deep because I do think that this is how most people take themselves away from their purpose by I had like I've known people who are like literally always involved in other people's stuff. And it's like, bro, you're sleeping on someone's couch. Like, go get your shit
Oh.
together. It's like so,
Mm.
like codependency, it really is. It's like yeah, I feel like the research, and again, everything that I've studied, like, I feel like it's not like a cut, like, it's not clear. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Even like in the book, I think Melanie, I don't remember her last name, but she writes the book Codependent No More. Ultimately, like even her and other books I've read about codependency, none of them can really have a clear-cut definition. But just from all the work I've done with clients, I feel like this just hits for me. And I've already mentioned it a few times, but it's
Yeah.
like if you're safe, I'm safe. If you're not safe, I'm not safe. But
Yeah.
there is so many layers to it. But yeah, I feel like what you mentioned, like those pillars, it's like that's spot on completely.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go re-listen, get Hazel to listen to this and pull those out because I'm like, okay, there's something there. Yeah, it just like, but again, it's interesting because I do think that the codependent would have a tendency to likely be with unhealthy individuals, right?
Correct, correct. It's like a moth to a flame, codependents and narcissists, if we want to call it that,
Yeah.
because they have the same core wounds of not feeling good enough, just they have different coping mechanisms to get their needs
And
met.
yeah, and ultimately it almost feels like if a codependent goes with a narcissist, quote unquote, um, they don't have to face themselves because they're so focused on everything else. See, like,
That hits. Totally. Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Other people's, like when I was in that trauma bonded relationship with a covert narcissist, it was a huge distraction from my purpose and what I wanted to do with myself and my own emotions.
Okay, but can we talk about that? I'm like, why do
Yeah.
people? Because you know what? Like, it's so funny because I've been doing this work for years, and last night I was just like going super deep in like my messaging and things like that and my positioning. I feel like we need to do that every quarter. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
just to like really and it was like, man, one of the things that I love and I'm obsessed with and I think is the core of my work is closing separation between the man, separation between yourself, separation with your goals. And I'm literally opening up my laptop because I'm like, I have to make a note about codependency because I honestly think that codependency is like it's like a sneaky way of like avoiding what you have to do.
Correct. It's really unconscious too. Like I used to really gossip. Like I remember even sending voice memos to my best friend when I live alone now, but I was living with two roommates. One of them was a friend of mine and her boyfriend, and they were having some argument or something. And I was like, oh my God, what if they break up? I was like freaking out about it for like a week. And it's like, what is that distracting you away from? And it's like, and just as I've worked on myself and done this work, that just naturally goes away. Like
Yeah.
truly. And I've noticed if I'm really dysregulated, or just something's going on in my life, it my body will want to go back to that and do it again. And I'm like, no, we're not going back there. But you can try. I can notice wanting to do that, but I know
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is just a sign that I'm dysregulated and I need to regulate myself.
Yeah, totally. Like looking for comfort. It just feels like human beings are obsessed with like not self-actualizing.
Well, oh, okay. That's a good point. Okay. I want to add to that point. So have you ever, and for those listening, and for you, Kelsey, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fabulous. It's like the foundation, like the lowest tier, it's like food, water, shelter. And then the second one is like safety and security, financial stuff. And then third is love and belonging. And then I
Mm,
believe fourth is like some sort of growth. But then the fifth is like self-actualization. So if these core needs, those foundations aren't met, you can't self-actualize. If you're in survival, if you're dysregulated, if you don't have that love and belonging because of your wounds from childhood, you're not going to be able to truly self-actualize to an extent to what you would be able to.
yeah. And then you know what's hitting me so deeply as we're saying this? I feel like we're getting so many downloads for like our work with our clients. It's amazing. I'm literally connecting it to, have you ever looked at the like scale of consciousness that goes from like red and then all the way up? If we actually look at those, like the root chakra is our safety, our security, and then we go up. So, and then like again, the heart is green. So it's like kind of midway, love, belonging. So that actually makes so much sense that we do have to literally go piece by piece, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's like, I don't know if you're in, do you know Dr. Joe Dispenza
Yeah,
and
yeah,
his work?
yeah.
Live for him, do his walking meditations and meditations, daily. But ultimately, he talks about, the centers or chakras, whatever you want to call it, right? It's like the first one is your sacral chakra, your sexuality, your creativity. If you've had sexual trauma, all of these things can block that flow of creativity.
Hmm.
And then the root chakra, it's all about security, relationships, safety. And
Yeah,
so, and then the third one is your solar plexus, your stomach. This is where your power and your confidence comes from. So if you've experienced your anxious attachment, if you have an anxious attachment style, I guarantee you one or all of those three are blocked because you're not in your heart center because you can't. Those centers are
yeah,
blocked from the trauma you've experienced. And so I feel like that's a really good framework to look at. Like you mentioned, it's like if those aren't working, the heart's not going to be fully open and activated if you don't feel safe enough to do that.
yeah, yeah, totally. And what I'm seeing in like the collective consciousness is women are open, like, but like up. So they're super awakened, blah, 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 all these things. And I'm always like, you're not that awake because you're emotionally unavailable and you don't know how to fucking maintain a relationship or make money or do anything. So you're not there. And then the men are the lower chakras. So they're like in their sexuality, they're in their primal nature, they're grounded, they've got their stuff. And ultimately, what I'm seeing today, I was on a call with my group, and I was like, "You're emotionally unavailable. You're all fucking emotionally unavailable." And that's literally how I was saying it. And they were all laughing, and they're like, "Dang it!" And it
Mm.
was like, no one is in the heart space right now, or very little people are actually in the heart space, and we're just having this
Mm-hmm.
crazy disconnect, men and women all over the dating world. I made a TikTok last week. I was like, everyone needs to do a PSA worldwide. Everyone stop dating. Everyone just stop dating and just heal. But then we can't heal without actually being face to face. So it's like
Correct.
slow it down and heal together. But yeah, the women I'm seeing need to root down and heal all of these security safety stuff. And the men need to go
Correct.
freaking up and connect with
Fucking
something
truth.
other than their dick, you know?
Fucking
So,
truth, man. Fucking
right?
truth here, Kelsey. Yes. Also, it's like adding on to your point of women like are up here and men are down there. What happens with if you've experienced trauma, right? You like aren't rooted in those three chakras. So you're and when you are codependent, your third, if you want to call it that, your third eye, your intuitive center, that's hyperactive. It's
Mm,
people like to call it hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is scanning your environment to make sure that you're safe. So of course, women are also very conditioned to do that. And men are very conditioned to be in those lower chakras because they learn, oh, I'm only worthy if I'm making a lot of money and can provide and, use my dick a certain way.
have sex for 45 minutes, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so crazy. Oh my gosh. So for people who are listening, it's like, and this is, you know, uh, even Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation, it's like he has warnings. Like you cannot just start opening up your higher chakras without actually being grounded or rooted in anything. Like this is where people do come out of this stuff going crazy, or like, you know, people doing psilocybin and all these things trying to like awaken their higher chakras. And it's like, bro, you aren't in your body, right? So this is not going to end well.
Yes.
It's just like,
Yes.
yeah, like thank
Yes.
it's like actually
Yes.
like a literal shit show out there with, this is why people like you and, you know, the work that I do and like the work that we do is so powerful because we're actually integrating them. But for people that are listening, it's like we've talked about so many different things, right? And I honestly like, let's just throw a number. I feel like 97% of the population is either codependent, anxiously or avoidant attached, or just like not complete. Like I feel like that's just like the world right now. So it's like people
Yeah.
listening, what can they
Mhm.
do? You know? Yeah. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
right now?
Yeah. I want to get into that, like of how to actually heal this stuff. And also, research suggests that 50% of the people are secure. But I'm
Okay,
like,
that's good.
is that true? Is that true? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard because obviously I'm biased. Like I work mostly with anxiously attached and somewhat some people are avoidantly attached. But okay, one last thing about plant medicines.
Yeah.
I think I want to share something about that. People, yes, adding to Kelsey's point, you need to feel safe enough in your body because with trauma therapy or somatic coaching, what I do, we're not bringing all that shit up at once. The first few weeks are helping you to feel good in your body and to regulate and learn how to process your emotions and actually feel safe in your body. And then when we go into the somatic work, the hypnotherapy, the deeper things, then we're able to go much deeper into it. And with plant medicines, you don't do that. You have no control. It brings all of that shit up at once, and that's just too much. One definition of trauma is too much too soon. So you
Mm,
want to be very, very careful, and that's why being trauma informed is so imperative as a practitioner or coach if you're in this space. And not a lot. I'm like a few clients of mine have come to me after doing ayahuasca, shrooms, and they're traumatized. They've had
mhm.
actual PTSD from from that because it brought up too much too soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
It can actually cause more fragmentation. And I love that you're talking about that. Um, like I in my past years ago did a lot of plant medicine on my own, and my but like I have a fucking tattoo on my neck and my forehead. Like I have a role in this world of like shaman healer. Like I was meant to go through, I can hold this stuff, you know what I mean? I've lost both my
Mm.
parents, I've witnessed hundreds of births and deaths. Like I've literally been initiated to hold these things. And I think that and this isn't a better than, there isn't anything. I think that some people can hold their trauma in deep ways, and we are the ones who end up holding others through it. And I think that other people need to be held through it. And it's like
Mm.
the amount of stories of people like doing MDMA at a rave and then remembering some repressed sexual trauma and all these, it's like, it's not, I actually like condone this like big time. I'm just like, if you do not know how to hold a stressful day sober, like you cannot go touch any of these things. And I, ayahuasca, something in my soul always said no. And then I lived in Mexico for a year and a
Mm.
half. And I've always had this thing where if it finds me, then it's like don't go looking for it. If it finds you, then okay. And it found me and I prepared. I did the whole stupid week of like, no, I'm like, I eat like animal based, okay? So like the whole
Yeah.
week with no meat and all these things. So like
I've heard about
I
that.
prepped the whole week and then I was ready with
Mhm.
my little backpack to go out in the jungle and do ayahuasca, and it got canceled. And I was like, that is a sign I will never. And then I ended up doing
Mm.
peyote instead. And that was like the most beautiful experience. But again, I can hold myself. And
Mhm.
peyote is like, and I did it very small. And peyote is like a grandfather. But like these
Mm.
things, they come in, like I can tell you from like experiences, like it is like a punch in the fucking face, a beat down. Like it is
Yeah.
not pleasant. Even even like I know you probably feel this with our clients. I have clients sometimes I come in with one voice note, one truth, and they are like, this is intense. I'm like, can you imagine getting 75 of those within the span of 30 minutes? It's just like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
healthy, honestly. So anyone
Mm-hmm.
listening, don't, I did a sales call the other day. I said, have you done any work with a coach? No, I've just been doing shrooms. I'm like, okay, so you've done no fucking work.
Yeah, and I'm not here to judge anyone, right? Everyone's doing the best with what they can,
Mhm.
and but I think if you were, I completely agree with your opinion and perspective, like 1,000%. And wow, something from the divine was like protecting you
Yeah,
from ayahuasca. Like that's crazy.
yeah,
And yeah, I just believe that if you don't feel safe in your body and you haven't been doing the trauma healing work, I wouldn't recommend doing it. If you've been like doing this trauma healing work, you've been going to the deep, darkest depths of your shit and you feel regulated most of the time, and and maybe you go to some sort of retreat where there's therapists, there's doctors, there's
yeah,
shamans and healers that can help you like hold that whatever comes up, then like maybe you could consider it.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm totally with you. I 100%. Like I
yeah.
do agree that you should not do plant medicines if you haven't done the trauma work. Sorry.
And if, yeah, that's it. And then once you get the trauma, go have fun. No, but like, balance, like conscious, like we have to bring, I think that, and we're going to get into this and then we'll close this out. But for me, and I know that this is what I'm feeling collectively is like slow. Like, I love how you said trauma is too fast, too soon. That hit me on so many levels because even in business, I've had crazy numbers in business and then collapsed after. It was too much too soon, even of a good thing. It was too much too soon,
Yes.
right? It was very traumatic, oddly enough. And people will be like, making so much money is traumatic. Yes, it actually can be when you're not used to it, right? So
Mhm.
I think that like, whatever my whole thing is like always trust yourself, trust your soul. But even if you did want to delve into these different modalities, things like that, it's like slow,
Mhm.
conscious, in safe environments. And I think it's the same thing in relationships too. And healing all of this stuff, like move slower, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And that's the hard thing with people who are anxiously attached. It's they don't want to move slow, and that's where narcissists come in with the codependence, because narcissists will move very, very quickly. If you're emotionally unavailable, your mask will slip within 3 to 6 months. And so
Mm,
their true colors will show. And so they'll try and speed that process up if you're a narcissist. And that's where a lot of that love bombing can come from, because you can't keep up a mask and facade forever. And then to the anxious attacher, it feels like heaven, because oh, someone's
yeah.
finally choosing me. It's soothing their nervous system. It's soothing that fear of abandonment temporarily. But yeah, completely agree with everything that you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part that you just said though is really big. I think it is really big because like what that's making me feel is like I love like archetypes like God and the devil, things like that. And it doesn't have to be like a religious thing, just like the light, the dark, things, you name it. And you know, they say like the devil comes in as everything you could ever want, or like the devil comes in
Mm,
like a red dress. So for the anxiously attached, it almost sounds like, yeah, like that when it comes in and it just feels too good, too safe, everything is healed. That's a big red flag, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, like the trauma bonded relationship I was in, we moved in within 4 months.
Yeah.
That's totally on me. I've learned my lesson clearly, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it feels good to that abandonment wound to go quick. But yeah, absolutely agree. And some things that you can do to actually heal, whether it's avoidantly attached or anxious attached, both of these attachment styles, if we want to say anxious attachment, learning how to feel safe in your body, regulating your emotions. And this is what I help you do in my 8-week program. But a free resource in my Instagram is a meditation that teaches you how to heal that abandonment anxiety, feel safe in your body. There's somatic self-soothing touch in there that helps with cortisol levels, you know, breath work to really soothe the nervous system, and it teaches you how to locate what sensations am I noticing? Where is it located? What emotions are coming up? Because when we can tune into, okay, these are the sensations I'm feeling, these are the emotions, instead of getting stuck in our mind and our story, that's what's actually going to help you reduce anxiety and feel safer in your body, because overthinking is just a sign of underfeeling, baby.
I love that. It's also like it's like also just clicking. That's how you're actually embodied in your feminine. The feminine energy is secure because if you're in your head, you're in your masculine. You're thinking, you're processing, you're all the things. So yeah, that feels so good. This I feel like there's so many things that we could talk about, and also I feel like it's been an hour, and this is such a beautiful conversation. So we are going to have your Instagram, all your links posted below. You have an 8-week like container. Do you want to just chat about that a little bit? And then I think you have a podcast too. So tell everyone like where they can find you, what that 8-week container looks like. The meditation sounds amazing. But yeah, just talk to us a bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'll just start with my Instagram. So my Instagram is Heal with Val, HEAL with VAL on IG. And then my 8-week program, it teaches you step by step exactly how to heal your anxious attachment in 8 weeks. If you
Love it.
like, it's just the most powerful thing that I've seen with women, with the people that I work with. My God, the amount of transformation. And it's really powerful when you combine all of these modalities into one. And that's really how I created my 8-week freedom from anxious attachment blueprint, because it is literally a blueprint to heal your anxious attachment style. You will have healthier relationships. You will feel safe in your body. You'll know exactly how to self-soothe so that you're not dependent on your partner to help you self-soothe. And I'm not saying like don't co-regulate or don't reach out for support. That's absolutely imperative. But if we don't know how to self-soothe on our own, relationships are going to be extremely triggering and uncomfortable and anxiety ridden. So that's really why I do the work that I do.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds so good. I'm just like in my like business marketing brain, I'm just like, what a clear result. What a great package. I'm like, this sounds amazing.
You.
Like,
Thank
I'm like,
you.
oh, that sounds so good. Yeah, I love it. And then you have a podcast that they can go check out. They can go find you. I feel like I
Yes.
saw, yeah, I'm just super excited. You have your meditation, you have everything. Okay, this was so beautiful. I feel like we went really deep on some really intense topics here. I think that anyone listening was probably like emoji, like
What's
mind
happening?
blown emoji. Yeah, this was
Yes.
amazing. Valerie, is there any last thing that you just want to share with everyone listening? Yeah, just like, or any last little piece of wisdom that you want to share?
Absolutely. Yeah, I also forgot to mention my actual podcast name. So it's called The Anxiety Recovery Podcast by Valerie Rubin. I'll send Kelsey that link. But yeah, it was so amazing being on this podcast with you today, Kelsey. Thank you so much for having me on. I would say some last words of wisdom is I would just say know that everything is temporary. The hard times that you're going through are temporary. It's not going to stay like this forever. And you are the creator of your life. You get to choose a different reality. You get to choose a different life for yourself when you do the healing work. And it is all available to you.
I love that. Yeah, that's so good. I love it. That was so good. And I love how at the end there's like this like light shining on you. Like, I don't know, it's like sunshine or something. There's like this new light. I love it. Valerie, this was so beautiful, guys. This was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for listening. And please, tag us both on your stories, share like whatever came up for you. And please reach out to her. This sounds so good. Like, you're such an expert in the anxious attachment realm. It's so good. Like, go give her a follow. Yeah, she's gonna heal all your shit. That's it. All right. Thanks, Valerie. Bye.
Yeah.